Welcome to the MAG Network Podcast.
Hi, my name is Rick Green. I'm the chair of the Asphalt Industry Alliance, known as the AIA, which is a joint venture between the MPA, the Mineral Products Association, which is effectively the trade body for those who produce aggregates in the UK, and Eurobitume, which represents the European bitumen suppliers. We hold this annual survey, which we send out to all the local authorities across England and Wales. It doesn't include Scotland, because that's a devolved government. I know Wales is as well, but we send it out to all the local authorities, and we ask them a series of questions about road conditions, about funding, about the amount of potholes, about what they're spending the money on. And from that, we compile a report. This year is the 27th time we've done that, so we've now got quite a long trend of data that, we could compare with previous years. And then we published the report, which has kind of become one of the definitive published documents with that kind of data. Certainly people like the DFT use it, and other bodies. Often we see it referred to in the press by other people as, probably the most robust set of data out there that is commenting on the state and the condition of the roads in England and Wales.
Mm-hmm. Can I just quickly ask you, obviously you say that your survey covers England and Wales. Do you have any sense at all as to the situation in Scotland and Northern Ireland, say, or is this purely something that we can only say this relates to England?
Not so much Northern Ireland, but we do speak to colleagues in Scotland, and whilst they kind of hold their own version of this, and the results are similar. This isn't something that's unique to England and Wales. They're just not included in this particular report, but when we talk to them, they're seeing the same trends, they're saying the same things, and I'd be very, very surprised if Northern Ireland isn't much the same. This is, I think there's 153 local authorities that we send this out to, and it's not like, it's great in Yorkshire and rubbish in Devon or whatever. Across England and Wales, there's a pretty consistent state of play with regard to the state of the roads. London as well, because we report in terms of England, Wales and London, because there's a lot of district councils and unitary authorities within London. And London has a different funding system because of Transport for London, etc. Mm-hmm. So we report it in three different sections. We aggregate it all together, but you can look at the results for England, you can look at the results for Wales, and you can look at the results for London separately. Okay.
So what's the headline findings? Obviously, like I say, you've done the report for how many years was it now?
27.
27 years. What's the latest alarm report that came out earlier this year? Mm-hmm. Some of the headline figures were quite shocking, shall we say. Do you want to just quickly run us through what the headline findings are?
Yeah, I think it's a year of records, really. Some good and some bad. It's a record year in as much as the response rate we got from the local authorities is at an all-time high, which is great because it just serves to underpin the robustness of the report. I think it was 70% of the local authorities responded to the report, which makes the point that they take it seriously. 70% response rate in a survey is quite very good, I think. So we got the best response rate we've ever had. But on the negative side, the key fact that we try to calculate is we say to these local authorities, how much money do you need to maintain the roads to an acceptable level? We can maybe talk about how you determine an acceptable level. And if you had all the money in the world, you had an unlimited amount of money, how much would it cost to bring them back to a state where you could then efficiently, effectively maintain them going forward? And that figure is really an overarching umbrella of all the sort of Because we have lots of other data, like how many potholes there are and how often it gets resurfaced and blah, blah. And you can look at all those trends. But the overarching thing is to do with how much would it cost to fix it. And that's at an all-time high. It's £14 billion is what would be required to bring the state of the roads back to a level where they could maintain them. And that's because there's a shortfall in what they need to, on an annual basis, there's a shortfall in the amount of funding that they've received. However, that shortfall has been going on for years. So it's not surprising that the overall backlog is growing each year, because each year they've not got enough money to do as much as they'd like. So I think the headlines are, the state of the roads in England and Wales are as bad as they've ever been. This is the local authority network now, not the strategic network. Is as bad as it's ever been. Well, certainly for as long as we've done this survey for 27 years, and the amount they get in each year in order to fix it is as bad as it's been as well.
Okay, and obviously this is a very emotive subject, and a lot of people get very angry with their local authority, think that they're not doing enough and everything else. To what extent do you think that there's room for improvement in terms of efficiencies and how the potholes are repaired compared to the overall funding deficit? Is it going to be a case of, if we gave 14 billion to these local authorities, would we see within 12 months all the roads being perfect?
No, you wouldn't see it within 12 months, because we also ask them how long would it take, and I think this year it was 11 years. Because you couldn't, the place would be in complete gridlock if you tried to fix everything at the same time. It'd have to be phased, and actually, whilst you're doing it, there'd be still some more forming and whatever. But it's not only £14 million, it's 11 years. But in terms of the first part of your question, I work closely with some of these local authorities and know the people involved and understand the systems and techniques and materials they're using. And I think they're doing a very, very difficult job. They've got a statutory obligation to maintain the roads in a safe condition, and yet, in our opinion, they're not getting sufficient funding to do that. And yes, they have come up ways of, slightly more robust materials or better sort of asset management of the network. But really, that's not scratching at the surface. The fundamental problem is they haven't got enough money. And if they had more money, they could definitely make an improvement.
Yeah. And can you run through for us, obviously from your understanding, I can't imagine that you're going to claim to be an expert on this, but where does the funding actually come from? Does it all come from central government, or is funding raised locally? How does all that work?
It does kind of vary. As I said earlier, London is slightly different because of the arrangement through TfL, but put London to one side. Throughout England and Wales, the money comes from two primary sources. One is their own resources. So the local authorities have powers to raise money with community charge and other things like car parking and various revenue streams they get. However, the majority of the money, slightly more than half of the money, comes from central government, and that's principally from DFT. So their own resources, and actually a lot of them are spending their own reserves because they're so concerned about it. It's not just what they've raised, they're also spending their reserves. But the bulk of the money really is coming from central government, and the vast majority of that from the Department for Transport.
Yeah, and I think I read in the report that you're estimating that councils, the amount of available money is only about 2/3 of what they would need as an annual budget.
And not surprisingly, if that's the case, the conditions will continue to get worse. What we also do as part of this survey is not just the sort of quantitative part of it that you see in all the stats that we produce. We also hold a number of focus groups with the local authority engineers, so we can get some qualitative feedback from them. And yeah, I mean, they agree that the conditions are getting worse. That's underpinned by the stats, but they're saying they're doing absolutely everything they can, but they just haven't got enough funding to keep the roads to the level that we might expect. So it's been underfunded for decades now. You know, we can go back, and there's a couple of charts in the report that show that year on year on year on year, it's been underfunded. So it's no surprise at all, really, that the backlog and the conditions are deteriorating.
Yeah, it is literally a case of for every pothole you repair, 2 more repair.
Well, that's a really interesting question. Last year, the local authorities fixed 1.4 million potholes, which is one every 22 seconds, which is balmy, isn't it? But we only know the ones they fixed because we get the information, because obviously they record them and they log them and they put them in a big database, etc. We don't know how many potholes have not been fixed. It would appear, though, in the last 12 months, is it anecdotally? Certainly there's been a lot more profile around potholes in the state of the roads. Now, our report, again, it's not surprising. We're saying from our stats that they're at an all-time low. But I think people are noticing them more now, and it's getting, you know, we've seen it on the news, and we've seen it in, you know, the Daily Mail's running a campaign about potholes. You know, we've been talking to a number of the national newspapers who are all showing an interest. In fact, an MP leading up to the last elections, I can't remember the guy's name, but he's South Cambridgeshire, Conservative from South Cambridgeshire. He did an article in Conservative Home, which is the magazine for the Conservative Party. And it's quite a funny quote, really. He said, you know, leading up to the local elections that happened about a month or so ago, you know, what's the most important thing to the electorate? Is it China? Is it the rise of AI? No, it's potholes. And if anybody disagrees with that, they haven't been knocking on doors in the lead up to this local election. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's gathering momentum with the general public. Lots of the local MPs and local authority councillors, their mailboxes is full of complaints and comments around potholes. It's quite interesting, though, because the local authorities are actually the ones who are responsible. So writing to your MP, that is not the direct way. It's the local councillors who ultimately have the responsibility for fixing it. But of course, the government have a responsibility to give them enough money to do it. And there's this bit of a disconnect. It's not a disconnect, but you know, if you want some direct action, you're better off contacting the local council rather than your local MP.
Yeah, I mean, from a MAG perspective, what we're doing is encouraging our membership to take both approaches, so speak both to their local authority but also to their MP. With the MP, the ask is speak to the Treasury and see how you can resolve the funding issue. With the local authorities, it's more to do with the specifics, if there's a particular pothole that they've got a problem with, or if they feel that that their council is less efficient than it could be in terms of fixing it. Okay. Do you know, or do you have any idea from the survey in terms of the level of funding? Is it evenly and fairly spread amongst the councils, or is it something that you think there's room for improvement on that?
I don't think that in itself is the problem. I don't think that there are certain councils that are somehow singled out for less funding. There's a formula which depends on the amount of road length you've got, and then there's various little tweaks and caveats to that. I mean, some are reporting a bigger shortfall than others, but that's maybe because the road was in a poorer condition in the first place and they needed more to fix it. But then what do? Do you penalise the ones who have done a really good job in fixing it because they don't need it? It's a delicate, difficult subject, that. But across the board, there aren't any councils that come to us and say, oh yeah, we had plenty of money this year. It's shades of grey in terms of how much the shortfall has been.
Yeah, okay. In terms of sort of how we resolve the problem, I mean, I don't think potholes is a problem that's ever going to be totally resolved, but there's potential for getting things changed. Obviously, you've mentioned briefly there about you know, whether you approach a local authority or whether you approach an MP. Is the AIA doing anything specific in terms of campaigning on this, or is there anything that you think is going to produce a change in terms of how the problem is perceived and how it is tackled?
Yeah, I think the main way we're trying to do this is by, first of all, highlighting the problem, and by gathering sufficient robust data to build a case to say, you know, it's all well and good saying, oh, there's loads of potholes at the minute, but you've got to have some evidence. You know, it can't just be anecdotal. And so the first step that we take is by conducting this survey every year, we can say, look, this isn't just anecdotal. This isn't just, I've noticed one outside my house. We've surveyed every local authority in the country, and these are the results. And, you know, there is a significant problem here. However, as I said earlier, I do believe that the local authorities are operating under very difficult circumstances in terms of the financial constraints that they've got in order to fix it. So what we're doing is using this the survey to highlight the problem, and then, you know, get publicity for it, so, you know, it's out there in the public domain. But we also are a part of the all-party parliamentary group for Better Roads. So we're regularly having dialogue with government and suggesting to them that they perhaps need to consider giving more money to the local authorities to give them the funding to maintain the roads better. And, you know, every now and again, you know, we get a bit of good news. Just after the recent local elections, there was a £200 million injection that the Prime Minister announced to go towards potholes and fixing roads. But that's a drop in the ocean to how much is needed. So I suppose the way we're trying to improve things is make it visible, raise it in the public attention, bring it to the attention of government. We're also trying to offer some solutions. You know, we think it would be so much better if the money was pre-planned, pre-programmed. I mean, what happens is they get a different amount every money every year, and they never really quite know how much they're going to get until the sort of statements come out. Yeah, potholes are not inevitable. Potholes are really a symptom of a poorly funded maintenance regime. If local authorities had enough money to resurface roads, I use the word properly, but I probably shouldn't use that word, but if to resurface roads rather than go out and put a stick in plaster, which is effectively what a pothole is, and if they had sufficient resources for sufficient time, you could see the end of potholes. Now, okay, that's a little bit utopian, but we could certainly see a damn sight fewer than we've got at the moment with sufficient funding. So, yeah, that's where what we're trying to achieve is get sufficient funding from central government to local authorities to give them enough money to raise the standard of local roads. So
in many respects, it's sort of like it's almost a paradigm shift, isn't it? From a sticky plaster, repair the potholes, to a let's come up with a proper maintenance regime that means that the pothole problem isn't really an issue any longer.
Absolutely. You know, not only are potholes dangerous and horrible and the curse, as the Prime Minister said recently, it's also not an efficient use of the money. You know, it costs a lot more going out and fixing little potholes in the round and the whole life costing than actually resurfacing the road. It's also better from a sustainability point of view in terms of the resurfacing the road. You know, that's proven that, you know, roads that are smooth and pothole free have less of a carbon footprint than going out, you know, ones with potholes. So, yeah, it is, but, you know, there's a long way to go before we get to the stage where we're complaining that my road hasn't been resurfaced, but there's no potholes. You know, on average at the moment in the UK, roads are being resurfaced once every, the UK, in England and Wales. They're being resurfaced every 111 years, which actually, if you think about the mathematics behind that, that means that less than 1% of the network is being resurfaced every year. Now, you know, that just isn't enough, and we're losing ground.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, certainly, I mean, from a personal perspective, the number of times I go out and you'll see effectively a pothole repair that's in the middle of a previous pothole repair, or you'll see a pothole repair where there's another pothole about 2 yards down the road that hasn't been repaired, and you think the efficiency just isn't here. And to be fair, we're calling our campaign Resurface Our Roads, not Repair Our Roads. So I think, yeah, in an ideal world, I think we need to have a long discussion nationally about it to decide, well, okay, how do we tackle this? Because clearly what we're doing at the moment isn't working.
Yeah, the whole pothole thing, I use an analogy sometimes. It's like if you've got a cracked tile in your bathroom. Yes, you could dig it out and put another one in, but it's never going to be as good as, and it'll allow water in there and so on and so forth. You need to do a proper job. The whole potholes are formed by freeze-thaw effect, and once you've got a defect in the road and it allows water to get into that defect, and then it freezes, and when water freezes it expands and it makes a bigger hole, and then more water gets into it and it freezes again and it'll make a bigger hole, and eventually a pothole is formed. When you fix the pothole, it's never really a permanent fix. It can make it safe, so you don't fall off your motorbike because it's been filled with something. But ultimately, it's always going to be a weak spot in that road, and it's the same with utility openings. They're nearly as problematic as potholes. I mean, there are codes of practice, and I'm sure some of them are all following doing a very good job. But ultimately, it's always a weak spot in the road. And so once you've broken that sort of membrane that a road is, it's very, very difficult to successfully repair it again.
And obviously, you're representing the industry side of things. Is there any sort of magical solutions in terms of a super performing new form of asphalt, or asphalt made out of some other materials? Is there anything like that on the horizon at all?
I can assure you, if there was, we'd be doing it. We are always looking for better materials, innovative materials. We're looking for, we're very conscious of carbon footprint, and we're making warm mix asphalt now that's mixed at a lower temperature, so it's we're not using as much fuel in the making of it. Looking at our carbon footprint, and the major companies in England and the UK are. We all have R&D departments, and we're looking to improve and come up with better materials, things like diesel resistant for bus stops and things like that. But fundamentally, this is a funding issue. We can make some gains, and the local authorities, nothing's 100% efficient, is it? Even German motorbike engines aren't 100% efficient. And I'm sure there could be some marginal gains, but I think the local authorities have come a long way in the last decade in terms of, the whole asset management strategy and how they're getting new and innovative tools in order to fix it. But there's only so far you can go. If actually at the end of the day you haven't got enough money, that is the fundamental problem. There are some gains we can make with materials, technology and systems and tools, and we have done. Over the last decade, there's been quite a lot of gains made in that area. But it all comes down to money.
Yeah, like I say, it's often said, isn't there? There's no problem that you can't solve with a big bag of money. Unfortunately, we just don't have that big bag of money.
And it's really difficult. I mean, I'm saying we need to invest more money in the roads, but there's some really tough choices, aren't there? Government, local authorities have to make tough choices. There are lots of competing areas that you can make a case. Oh well, we must put money into social services. We must put money into education. We must put money into defence. And at the end of the day, there's only so much money, and it's all about prioritisation. We think we're almost coming to a cliff edge in terms of the state of the roads, because it has been sort of an easy target, really. Roads don't fail catastrophically, they just gradually get worse. And it's kind of easy to kick the tin down the road for another year and say, well, okay, we'll sort the roads out in another year or whatever. But that's been going on for too long now. And we're getting to the stage where, you know, the roads, and it's becoming obvious, isn't it? Because the general public have noticed the state of the roads are particularly bad, and they will continue to deteriorate unless there is more funding provided.
Excellent. Okay, is there anything else that you'd want to cover or you think that we've missed?
I don't know if there was much motorbike talk there, but I'm not sure you particularly want it focused on motorbikes, is it?
No, that's at the end of the day.
You'll do that twist.
Yeah, we will put the motorcycling twist on it.
Yeah.
It is really a case of this is not a motorcycling problem as such. It's one of those problems that
but motorcyclists are impacted more than everybody else.
Yeah, I mean the level of impact that it has on anybody on two wheels, whether that be cycling or on motorcycles, is far more significant than it is for somebody on four wheels.
Yeah.
For four wheels, it'll generally result in a repair bill. For two wheels, there's just as much chance of it resulting in a hospital trip.
Yeah, no, I understand that. No, I don't think there's anything else. I think you asked the questions that teased out much of what we'd spoken about earlier. Yeah. Fundamentally, I don't think it's the local authorities. I think it's a lack of funding for local authorities that is the problem.
Yeah. Excellent.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time.